We're live on all of the different platforms right now. We've got some great interviews coming up, huge interviews coming up. We've got Professor Marandi hopefully joining any minute now. We have, who else? We have Anthony Aguilar, Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar coming on, and Dimitri Lascaris, who's been on the ground in Iran, on the ground in Lebanon. It's going to be great. If you guys can let me know the audio is working well, that would be awesome. Brilliant. Thank you for letting me know immediately without even me asking. This is the brilliance of this crew. Lots to speak about, lots of news. Iran sent a deal to the United States of America, multiple stages. The US did not like it. Trump said it was garbage. He said the deals on the conversations and the negotiations are on life support. Everything is moving and culminating towards war. Now, when that will be, this is what we're unsure about, because he does have that meeting in China. This is President Trump. He is going to China on Wednesday. He is returning on Friday. And we know Donald Trump is the weekend warrior. And so if there is a chance that there is a war, then highly likely it will be tomorrow. So today we have, as I mentioned, Professor Marandi. We have, what's his name again? We have Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar. And we have Dimitri Lascaris on. Tomorrow, we're going to be starting earlier. We're going to be starting earlier, 11 a.m. We have David Icke, the one and only David Icke. We have, what's it again? Dr. Atusa. We have Harrison Smith. We have Larry Johnson. We have Ryan Dawson. We have Professor Pape, who is extremely viral at the moment. So we've got about 7 interviews tomorrow lined up. One at the start of the day, one during the day, at the end of the day. Huge interviews they're going to be. They're going to be gigantic. So make sure you are aware of those as well. Retweet the space, reshare the space, let everybody know we're live. Retweet the video, like the video, comment in the main section, comment in this section, hit the algo. Let me know your thoughts. Are you guys excited for these interviews? It is going to be fire. Let me just make sure it's live everywhere. Yes, it is. Let me just pin this. Okay, and I'm going to, in the nest, there's going to be 2 tweets coming up in the nest, guys. What I want you to do for those 2 tweets is I want you to retweet them and reshare both of them. This is what only thing I ask of you. I bring you all the content, all the info, but I just want you to retweet the tweets in the nest and quote tweet them as well. I will retweet them as the interviews go on. So we should have Professor Marandi coming on. He did say he was having some connection issues, so let's hope he doesn't, because I'm gonna. So hopefully he joins. We're just waiting for him. And then immediately after the Professor Marandi interview, I'll give you the news in detail. And then after that, we'll take it from there. Should be good. Just bringing him up. Professor Marandi, hope you're doing well. Hope things are well. Thank you so much for joining us. Professor Marandi is a professor at the University of Tehran. Thank you so much for taking your time out to join us. How are you?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me.
We appreciate you coming onto the show. Professor Marandi, there's a lot to talk about today. We had Iran send a proposal to the United States of America yesterday. That proposal was rejected by the United States of America, and Trump today said that the negotiations are on life support. What's your response to that?
It really doesn't matter to us. The proposal is in line with the 10-point plan that Iran presented, which Trump accepted as the framework for negotiations after the 39 days of fighting. And it includes reparations, it includes respect for Iran's sovereignty, it includes a ceasefire for the entire region so that the Zionist regime cannot slaughter men and women and children in Lebanon and Gaza at will. If the Americans don't accept it, that's their problem. They should not expect Iran's position to change. They should not, in any way or form, compare Iran to any other nation. Iran is going to remain very steadfast and very firm in protecting its sovereignty and in protecting its regional allies from Gaza to Lebanon to Yemen to Iraq and elsewhere.
So, as part of the claims, and we kind of had again conflicting reports. We had news from, like, for example, Fars News, Al Mayadeen, and then we had news from the mainstream media. And it seemed to suggest that there was agreement about what was in stage one. It was, for example, unfreeze the assets, end the war, Iran has control of the Strait of Hormuz, and various other things like that. But the second part, there was kind of a disagreement on stage two, where Iran, or the media from Iran, seemed to suggest that those hadn't even been discussed and those weren't part of the plan. Whereas the Americans made it seem like what the Americans wanted was a freeze of 12 years, but Iran was more amiable to a freeze of nuclear enrichment for 3 to 5 years. What's your thoughts on that?
No, that was not negotiated at all. In Islamabad, the Iranian side refused to talk about the Iranian nuclear program. Our priority is the ceasefire, which the Americans are not abiding by. And after that, it is the 10-point plan for peace. After that, we can discuss the nuclear program. But Iran has not agreed at all, at any point, to halt enrichment for whatever it was that you said, 3 years, 5 years, 50 years, 200 years. That's all nonsense. That's just material put out for the mainstream media to repeat. Just like Trump, when he says that we agreed to something 2 days ago to give up our enriched uranium, that's all nonsense. Iran has never said that. Iran would never say that. Iran has said from the very beginning that no enriched uranium is going to leave Iranian borders. But the mainstream media will repeat things so often that people will forget what has actually been said. Nothing that comes out of Trump's mouth has any credibility, and I think that people shouldn't take him seriously. And people shouldn't even take. The only media outlet that I would consider to be credible when it comes to the Iranian position is Fars News, Tasneem, Al Mayadeen is fair. These media outlets. The rest, I don't even follow personally.
No doubt. And now, another thing Trump said is, and I know you said ignore what he says, but obviously he is a US president. He said, and he made a number of comments, and all of them are about escalation today. He talked about basically resuming Operation Prosperity Guardian, which was the operation they did against the Ansarullah in the Red Sea. And it was about a major expansion of that. He talked about expanding Project Freedom. And then he said that's just going to be a small element of this major military expansion that they plan to do. What's your thoughts on that?
The Americans have, the Trump regime has waged war against Iran. They failed on the battlefield after 39 days. Then they begged for a ceasefire. That's why they accepted. Iran said, Trump himself said he'll accept the 10-point plan as the framework for negotiations. And then the United States began to violate the ceasefire. And Iran said, okay, as long as you violate the ceasefire, we're not going to allow the ships that belong to those 5 countries, those five family dictatorships who were involved in the war, who participated in the war, who helped murder Iranians, we're not going to let their ships go. The Strait of Hormuz has always been open, even during the war, as you know. Chinese ships, Iranian ships, Russian ships, Iraqi ships. We just hours ago, literally, I think yesterday, an LNG ship went to Pakistan and left through the strait, even though it came from Qatar, which helped slaughter Iranian children. So, but since it was for Pakistan, Iran was lenient. It also did the same for Indian ships, for Bangladeshi ships. even though some of them came from these 5 regimes. So the Strait of Hormuz was never closed. But Iran was going to allow more ships to pass through if the Americans and the Zionist regime adhered to the ceasefire agreement. They didn't. You recall Netanyahu carpet bombed Lebanese cities in order to, and slaughtered hundreds of people in minutes just to wreck the ceasefire. And Iran said, okay, as long as you're doing that, we're not going to let those ships go through. And then the Americans imposed a siege. That siege is an act of war. Iran said, we're not going to let those ships from those 5 countries go through. That's clear as day. So far, after more than 70 days, over 70 days, the Americans have been starving the global economy, all for the sake of Netanyahu, for the love of Netanyahu and Zionism and ethno-supremacism and genocide. For the love of that, the Americans they lost that 39 days. They lost in the ceasefire. If the ceasefire, they failed in the siege. If the siege was so successful, they wouldn't have carried out a hot war. Fine, but everyone should keep in mind, especially people living in Kuwait, in the Emirates, in Saudi Arabia, in Qatar, that we are heading towards summer. And it is already heating up. If right now you check the weather in Dubai, it says that the weather is very difficult right now because there's high humidity there. So if there's war and the United States targets our critical infrastructure, we can tolerate it. It'll be uncomfortable for us. But if in the summer heat, and things are just heating up now, if we retaliate and destroy the critical infrastructure of the Israeli regime in these 5 family dictatorships, then no one will be able to stay there. They'll have to leave these countries. These regimes will collapse. And I think that that will assure global economic depression that will be here to stay for years. And it will be done by Trump and Netanyahu.
And one last question on this before I talk about the UAE. So one of the first of all, Trump is having a meeting apparently with his national security advisors in terms of possibly escalating the war. But we also had Senator Mike Kelly, who basically let out what happened in the intelligence briefing, and they said the US is very low in stockpiles. They've ran out of they're running out of defense interceptor missiles. They're running out of offensive weapons. Pete Hegseth wasn't happy about it. He said, you're leaking intelligence, but it's fake. I don't know how that works, but only in Pete Hegseth's mind that works. But what's your thoughts on actually that, which does seem to suggest the US don't have the capability to continue this war on for much longer?
Well, Hegseth is an alcoholic, and having an alcoholic run the U.S. military is itself an act of insanity. But the Iranians are prepared, and the Americans hit Iran as hard as they could, and the Iranians hit back as well. And this time around, the Iranians will hit harder. But if the critical infrastructure of Iran is targeted, Iran will be ruthless, because retaliation is legitimate. We did not start a war, we did not escalate, but we will be ruthless, because the only way to stop aggression is to hit them back hard immediately. So if war starts, we will hit very hard, and that will be the end of these family dictatorships. I don't think they can survive a war if it's going to be the way in which Trump claims, where he says he's going to, remember he spoke about electrical power plants and bridges. If he wants to go there, we'll go there. And he will not win that war.
And just on those electrical power plants and bridges, one of the countries that I believe is probably the most, out of all the Gulf states who did, are bad, but the worst instigator is probably the United Arab Emirates. And last week we saw these claims that there was 8 waves of attacks. And Scott Ritter said that they'd seen some signature in the attack that happened in Fujairah that apparently had some American signature. Iran came out and denied that they were part of that attack. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, what happened in Fujairah or in the Emirates that day is a bit confusing because even here some people are not clear what happened. Remember, at the beginning of the war, we saw a number of attacks on Oman, and Iran had nothing to do with it. And the belief was that those were false flag operations, probably carried out by the Emirates. So we don't know exactly what happened in that particular case. However, the Iranians have said to the Emirates that because you are an ally of the Israeli regime, because you host Israeli regime forces, because you host the Mossad, you have to accept the consequences of your behavior. And the UAE has been more guilty, has played a more aggressive and sinister role than even Kuwait, Qatar, and Bahrain and Saudi Arabia in the war. So obviously they should not expect any leniency. We know that Qatar has secret relations with the Israeli regime. We know that, just like Turkey and Egypt and Jordan, all of them have relations. We know that these countries in the Persian Gulf have secret relations. But it's gone far it's far too much. And so they should not expect, in case of violence, they should not expect to be allowed to benefit from the violence against the Iranian people and not to see severe retaliation. Iran will probably treat the Abu Dhabi Emirate, the Abu Dhabi regime, in a different manner than it treats the other regimes in the Persian Gulf.
And this goes with the statement from Iran that they now see UAE as almost like an enemy military base, a base that's been used for Israel and the United States of America, and they don't see it as even a state. And so with the UAE, and you're saying that you're not sure that the attacks may have come from Iran or may not have, you're unsure about that. I guess the question here is whether the UAE partook in a false flag or whether it really was attacked. What we do know is that the UAE has been pressuring the United States of America, probably more than anyone else, although there are reports that many of these other countries are, to go into kinetic war with Iran. What's the reason for their eagerness when they have such frailties when it comes to their own defense?
That's a good question, and that's a question that should be asked of all these despots in the Persian Gulf. Why did they do this in the first place? Why did they not say no? They all thought at the beginning that they could have their cake and eat it too, from Qatar to Kuwait, to all of them. They thought that they could have their cake and eat it too. They could allow the Americans to slaughter little girls in schools and to murder our leaders and to bomb hospitals and to bomb universities. Many universities have been bombed. And they could say we're neutral, which is an insult to the intelligence of any sane human being. But in the case of Abu Dhabi and the Abu Dhabi Emirate, the Iranians know that they have gone much further, and they continue. The others are more worried about the future, but the Abu Dhabi regime is still pushing very hard for aggression. There could be many reasons. One is that all of these despots, they have taken many billions of dollars out of these countries, and they've bought palaces and mansions and expensive apartments and expensive neighborhoods and expensive cities across the Western world. And they've hidden countless billions of dollars in Western banks. So if anything happens to their regimes, they will be very wealthy and they will have no problem. Just like the Shah of Iran, when he fled the country, he had taken many billions of dollars, and they continue to have an extraordinarily good lifestyle, something that people across the world could not even imagine. These regimes have even gathered more wealth because they've had much more time to do so. So if something happens, these are the first people to leave. But his particular malice, I think, has to do with the fact that he's surrounded by Zionists who are more than happy to push these people towards sacrificing their country and their people. They probably are making him promises and telling him that things will turn out fine and well. I don't have an explanation, but Mohammed bin Zayed, ever since he came to power, he has been pushing for confrontation. Actually, the United Arab Emirates used to have the best relations of all the 5 countries in the Persian Gulf region with Iran. But ever since he came to power, ever since he became highly influential before coming to power, the relationship has deteriorated, and the Zionist regime. And we know the policies of the Emirates in Yemen, in Sudan, in Somalia, and across the Horn of Africa, and how destructive it has been and how obedient it has been to the interests of the Israeli regime.
And I'm in total agreement with you. I just don't see the UAE as any different to Israel. Every single thing that we have an issue with Israel, the UAE replicates that, whether it's the genocides, whether it's the attack on Muslims. I just released a Substack yesterday which detailed their financing of Islamophobia in the Western world in order to demonize Muslims in toto. And so this regime is a regime that, ironically, though in the face of it seems Muslim, and I'm not here to like excommunicate anyone, but finances and funds things that are there to directly attack the entire Muslims throughout the West. So I'm in agreement with you about the UAE. I think there's huge problems. Now, Trump's going to China on Wednesday. He's going to be returning on Friday. Most people think that because he's going to China, there may not be kinetic warfare, although you never know with the Americans. But there is a possibility something may be happening on Friday. How ready is Iran for this return to possible kinetic war?
Iran is prepared for war right now. Iran has been on high alert for, I think, a bit more than 2 weeks now. I'm not sure about dates. I'm not good at dates in general, but I've said on numerous shows and programs over the last couple of weeks that Iran is waiting for a potential imminent strike because the Americans have brought in a lot of forces and a lot of extra material has been brought in. They have a very large air power in Qatar, in the Emirates, in Saudi Arabia. They have ground forces, huge numbers of ground forces in Kuwait, in Bahrain, and in the Emirates too. So for some sort of campaign on the ground or an assault on the Iranian, on the mainland. So Iran has been prepared. Now, whether this materializes or not, the decision will be made in the White House. But Iran is fully prepared, and I've said this many times before. From the very beginning, Iran was planning for a long war, and Iran's strength is on the ground. So if the United States restarts the war, we've already seen what Iran's missiles and drones can do, and if it tries to enter Iran, we'll see what the Iranians do to them as well. This is not a war that the Trump regime and the empire can win. This will be a loss for him, and the world will remember that the catastrophe, the economic catastrophe that is looming was caused by Netanyahu and Trump and Zionism.
No doubt. Now, one of the small topic area, which is we've seen a lot of engagement over the last 4 or 5 days on the Strait of Hormuz. May the 5th, 6th, it kind of escalated quite a lot on the 7th, where they bombed a number of islands. They bombed Keshem, they bombed Bandar Abbas and Sirik, I believe it was. What's your thoughts on what's happening there? Is Iran taking it? What does Iran think about how they're going to be dealing with this strait? Because it seems like America's kind of pushing a lot in terms of what they're trying to do in the Strait of Hormuz.
Well, the Americans only struck civilian targets on the island and on the seas. They did not strike a single military boat, a naval boat. They did not strike anything that has a military value. In their aggressiveness, they bombed a boat that was carrying goods from Oman to Iran, a small boat, but it was carrying cargo, murdered a person, and that's the only person who died in the last few days. But ultimately, the best way to assess whether the Americans succeeded in their recent confrontation or acts of aggression was that they failed to enable any of the ships linked to those 5 regimes to leave the Strait of Hormuz. That's, I think, the most important sign of their failure.
One last question. What's your thoughts about the psychology of warfare between the United States of America and Iran? And we know what the US did when they bombed the girls' school at the start, and we've seen them target civilian infrastructure. But nothing is more exemplary of that than what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz. And what I mean by that is Iran has hit a number of vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. They've targeted the engines, and we've seen no loss of life. And yet, just a few days ago, we saw the United States of America, like they did in Venezuela, target innocent civilian vessels, and I believe there were 5 loss of lives. What's your thoughts about the kind of conduct and psychology of war when it comes to these 2 different nations?
Yes, you're absolutely correct. That tanker, they murdered 5 people on a tanker, and they were gloating about it because they don't care about human life. And they killed another person on that boat that was carrying cargo between Oman and Iran. These people have no morality. The political elite in the United States has no morality. The media in the United States, the mainstream media, has no morality. They're all controlled by the Epstein class, and therefore we are not surprised. During the 39 days of fighting, the hot war, 20 people were killed in the 5 countries in the Persian Gulf, the 5 family dictatorships. 20 people at most. Why? Because Iran was careful not to have ordinary people killed. So Iran destroyed all those US bases. It destroyed, except for American soldiers. It destroyed all those, in retaliation, all sorts of assets across the Persian Gulf. We know that. There was severe damage, but only 20 people died. In Iran, 3,400 something people were slaughtered. In Lebanon, look at all the people who are being slaughtered. Why? Because the West is, its leadership, its elites, they are uncivilized. They're barbaric. And their media protects these barbaric leaders and their acts. They hide them from the public, and they actually have the audacity to depict themselves and their regimes as the civilized world.
And this is unfortunately the problem we've got is that Iran is so careful in the way they're kind of dealing with this war that they're basically dealing with an enemy who is willing to go anywhere. And I guess, sorry, I know it's the last question, one last question. And this is something that I've always found difficult because I'm with Iran. Like, I think psychologically, I wouldn't be the right person to be in charge in this situation because it's like you have this defensive mindset, as in, they attack us, we'll only respond when they attack. But we're dealing with a kind of very brutal, evil, demonic enemy which has no limits or lines. And I guess, how do you kind of conduct warfare in that scenario where you're trying to follow the ethics that you believe in morally, spiritually, religiously, but then you're dealing with an enemy that doesn't have no lines. And sometimes when you, for example, deal with that enemy in that manner, it kind of restricts you a little bit.
Yes, and that, of course, is linked to our religious ideology, to our civilizational heritage. And regardless of what the West tries to say, it is clear as day how this is playing out. Hezbollah is targeting soldiers and tanks. The Israeli regime, in its rage, carpet bombs cities, and Western media pretends these are Hezbollah strongholds or Hezbollah targets, yet all we see are dead women and children. So we're dealing with a ruthless and barbaric enemy, but we don't want to be like them. We want to be different. There's a good book that maybe your viewers should read by Alistair Crook called Resistance. And it is about the revolution in Iran, and it explains quite well about the mentality of the revolutionaries in Iran. I think that would help your audience if they were to read that book.
Definitely. Professor Marandi, thank you so much for taking your time out to join us. I know you're at a short period of time, so really appreciate you giving us that. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. That was Professor Marandi, guys. Make sure that you give the professor a follow. Make sure you're following him on X. His X handle is, we're going to put it in the nest. It is SM Marandi. Make sure you're following all his work. This guy is very busy, still giving us this time. We really appreciate him. Like, comment, and share to this channel. Subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. Let me know your thoughts in the comments about what Professor Marandi said. He said that they're unsure whether those attacks in the UAE did come from Iran or not. He also said that they have certain ethics of war that they want to fulfill, that they want to abide by, and the Americans don't do so. This is what differentiates Iran with the United States of America and Israel. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. What do you think? Like, comment, subscribe, and have your notifications on. Put your notifications on. You go to the notifications and then press all. That way you'll be aware, because we've got so many interviews coming up. For example, I'm going to give you some of the news, and then later today we have, not later today, in a very short period of time, we have Dimitri Lascaris coming on. We have Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar coming on. We have okay, and we have Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar coming on. So those are going to be great interviews. They're going to be extremely important. So we're going to get through those, and it will be really, really good. Let me get you into the news now, because we did miss out on quite a bit of the news, and I know a lot of people here are here for the news. So in the gap that we have before Dimitri comes on, we will give you the news. In the meantime, guys, there is a tweet in the nest. If you can retweet that tweet, both of them, so that the people are aware of this this stream. So retweet, reshare, both of them. The one in the nest that is the live, as well as the YouTube link as well. Let me give you some of the news right now. Okay, let's go to 1 second. Okay, let me pause this. Okay. So again, we have another fire that's broken out in a refinery, and this time it's a fire broke out this morning at the HF Sinclair refinery. Wait, let me just move this so you can hear me. So it broke out in the HF Sinclair, Tulsa, Oklahoma, a 125,000 barrels per day facility. Thick black smoke visible for miles. The cause is unknown. This is now the fourth refinery, I believe, in the United States of America. We have got Richard Medhurst coming on Friday, if you know. What you call it again? And so, because his position is this, his position is that the US is the one who's behind a lot of these explosions that are occurring, a lot of these destructions that are occurring in the refinery, because they want to create the petro gas dollar. And so I guess the question to him is, when there was one, you could say they did it in order to hide. When it's two, you can maybe still make that argument. This is like the fourth refinery in the United States of America. So I'd say there's been more refineries now here in the US than any other country. Although if you combine them, that's a different story. But actually more has been hit than in the United States of America than any other country. You now have the Louisiana, Oklahoma, and where was the other two? There was another two, which I can't remember off the top of my mind, but Texas was another one, and I can't remember the fourth. So this is a lot, but we'll have Richard Medhurst on coming on to give his theory. So Also, we just got a statement from Iran's chief negotiator, you would probably call him, Galibaf. He said, our armed forces are ready to deliver a well-deserved response to any aggression, mistaken strategy and mistaken decisions will always lead to mistaken results. The whole world has already figured this out. We are prepared for all options. They will be surprised. Everyone's gearing up for some form of kinetic war. You heard here on this show, as well as this is what Iran's also saying, this is what Galibaf said, that this idea or notion or claim that Iran is willing to freeze its nuclear enrichment for 3 to 5 years or 12 years or, as Professor Marandi said, 50 years is fake news. There is no situation, there is no evidence, there is no claims that this is happening, that there is an attempt to freeze. So he's disavowing and debunking that claim. Okay, continuing on with the news. I mentioned this earlier, but we've got obviously more people have turned up now, and I do believe the space has been massively targeted, guys. So if you can retweet, reshare the space, quote tweet it, we only rely on you guys to let everyone know that the news is out. Trump obviously apparently had a phone call with Netanyahu today, and this is immediately after that. He's saying what? He's saying that the ceasefire is on life support. He said there's 1% chance of life. Yeah, and remember, Netanyahu did and wants the United States of America to get Kinetic and to target Iran's energy infrastructure. If they were to target Iran's energy infrastructure, it is very simple. It will be open season on the Gulf states. They will be eradicated. The Gulf energy supplies will be hit hard. The Gulf power plants will be hit hard. And in these desert countries, in these countries where everything is artificial, where living is not normal except if you're like a desert dweller, and everything has to be manufactured and created. In this situation, if you were to go kinetic in that manner, there's only going to be one result. Everyone will be leaving Dubai. And you got to now, if I was an Emirati, I would leave Dubai now. It's going to be very unsafe for you to live there. And this is the same with the rest of the Gulf states, because it's these countries that are pushing the United States of America and Israel and those countries are pushing the United States of America into this war. Trump said he's considering making Venezuela the 51st state. Basically, Ben Gurion Airport has essentially become a military base now, full of military planes. Iran's spokesperson warns UAE and Israel no axis will be formed in the Gulf. Ibrahim Rezai, spokesperson for Iran's Parliament National Security Commission, was direct. He said, quote, "We will not allow the UAE axis to be formed in the Persian Gulf region." We will not allow the UAE and Israel axis to be formed in the Persian Gulf. He added, Iran will not allow a single liter of oil to pass through the Strait of Hormuz without its permission, calling Hormuz control a first step in reshaping regional geopolitics. Well, the UAE and Israel already are in bed together. And if any of you guys read my Substack article, let me put it in the nest. You will see that the UAE, I went into detail on this. And do guys subscribe to the Substack. You can go to the Substack to subscribe to it. Is free. You don't need to pay for it. It's a free subscription, but you'll be aware of all the posts we do on Substack and any of these articles we read. And I am doing a series on the UAE. The first one of that series was specifically about UAE financing the hatred of Muslims in the Western world. And I went through the details in terms of the finances of it. So check that out. On the next series, the next episode in that series is going to be about another element that the UAE is taking part of. So you can see that in the nest. So you can go to that and you can subscribe. It's free to subscribe. Obviously, if anybody wants to become a paid member and support the work that we do, it helps us, do what we're doing. We rely solely on your support. As you know, for example, on the weekend, I could only do spaces for like a couple of hours because I had to go to London in order to look for other opportunities, because it's not easy to be on social media when you fight against Zionism and people talk a lot, but then no one really ever supports. That being said, Iran's foreign spokesperson, so check that article out and do subscribe to the Substack. Okay, coming to it. Iran's foreign minister spokesman, Dr. Ismail Baghai, reacted to Trump's nuclear attack threat. At the same time, he said that Iran can defend itself in any situation, and they have already and deployed responses depending on what occurs and what happens. They said that Iran's politician Haji Deligani said UAE will never be the same after what Iran did to it. Iran's armed forces will teach it a lesson they will never, ever forget. Calculate says best way to donate. The Beatrix just in the chat above you has got a link to the super chat. You can do that via the Shopify or through crypto as well. So that link is there. Beatrix has put it just above you. Thanks for asking. Okay, hantavirus is everywhere. Hantavirus is now being confirmed in multiple countries. They are claiming there's an outbreak of, for example, it has now moved to Argentina, Netherlands, Germany, United Kingdom, South Africa, Switzerland, United States, and Spain. We've got an interview tomorrow about the hantavirus. Let's see what people are going to say. Is this the new COVID? We'll find out. Today is the anniversary of when American Christian journalist Shireen Abu Akleh was killed by Israel. A journalist, American, Christian, killed by Israel today. It's been 4 years since they did that to her. They lied about it as well. Tried to do a cover-up until it was exposed. Iran's foreign minister said, a spokesperson said this, quote, "We fight whenever we need to. Whenever we determine, we use the weapons of diplomacy to realize the interests of the Iranian nation." From 2015 onwards, in 2018, the withdrawal from the JCPOA, and in the last year, even worse, the attack on the diplomacy and negotiation table was conducted by the United States of America. He said the US has positioned itself as the greatest threat to international peace and security. So I mentioned this earlier. There was a oil tanker that was coming from Qatar that was stopped on the strait because they didn't follow the procedure. One tanker was allowed through. That one was an LNG tanker. Actually, today's one was an LNG tanker as well. That was allowed through. And as Professor Marandi explained, that's the reason for that is because it was going to go to Pakistan. There was a tanker that is an Iraqi crude tanker that was allowed through the Strait of Hormuz. Okay. Apparently, not apparently, we know this. The IDF is collapsing. The IDF is struggling. The IDF is on its knees. In a closed Knesset session today, IDF Chief of Staff as the Mia pleaded for emergency conscription laws, warning the army is short 15,000 soldiers, including 8,000 combat troops. They're struggling. And compare that to Iran. Iran has many people who have joined the army ready to fight for their nation. They already had a 1 million-man army. And reports I remember reading was like nearly 30 million people had signed up ready to defend Iran against any foreign intervention, any foreign attempt to destroy their nation. So Iran is ready, Iran is aware, and as Professor Marandi said, they would like nothing better in the sense of they prefer no war, they prefer peace. But if there was going to be kinetic war, then if America attempted a ground invasion, that would be the worst mistake they'd ever make, because there would be so many Americans going back home in body bags. It would be innumerable. It will be uncountable. It would be significant. Okay, continuing with the news. One second. We should have Dimitri coming on. Let me just make sure he's able to join. Yeah, it seems like he's going to join. Okay. Okay. So this is according to Israeli media on Israeli army radio, and they've said the following. They've said that Hezbollah developed the FPV drone sector after the ceasefire in 2024. And as you know, those drones, they're so cheap to make. If you read my Substack on Lebanon, I break this down. It costs like $50 to make. Last June, the Israeli army attacked a large number of drone manufacturing workshops in Lebanon. The vast majority of Hezbollah operatives capable of operating FPV drones received their training during the previous ceasefire between November 2024 and March 2026. A senior Israeli officer said, "We are making technological intelligence efforts to locate and target these FPV drone operators." Well, they're not going to find them because they're deep underground and they are spread out across various locations. So their plan is not going to work. We've got a lot of footage coming out of Hezbollah continuing to hit Israeli targets, continuing to smash Israeli targets. Want to thank Calculate Drisk with the level 1 membership. Appreciate you being a member of the community and appreciate you becoming part of the moral resistance. We are the moral resistance. We fight against the oppression of those who perpetrate it, as is laid down in our spiritual, religious, moral makeup. I mentioned this to you guys earlier. Remember, there was an F-35 that made an emergency landing into the UAE. Was it hit or not? We don't know. Was it destroyed or not? We don't know. It did go missing over the UAE, so it either crashed into the UAE or basically did an emergency landing in the UAE. So yeah, that is that. Okay, let me just give you some more news. Yeah, so I mean, look, at the end of the day, just to recap on some of the points until the next person joins. Major escalation. Trump is basically seeming like he is going to escalate significantly. He's talking about how, first of all, These negotiations are on a lifeline. He's talked about how that basically there's a 1% chance these negotiations are going to succeed. He's talked about that they're so far apart and what Iran wants is rubbish. Iran's been very clear in what it wants, so these claims make no sense by Trump. Furthermore, we know Netanyahu has been pushing for war. He did a press conference yesterday talking about how they need to get Kinetic. He also did a press conference today. Apparently, he talked to Trump today and pushed him towards war. Trump also has a meeting with his national security advisors and his military advisors, as does Netanyahu. Furthermore, Trump has a meeting in Wednesday. Wednesday, he'll be going to China to meet President Xi of China. And on Friday, he's going to be returning to the United States of America. So, I mean, based on that, it doesn't seem like something might happen today. Sorry, might happen up till Friday. Likely, kinetic war, if there was to be some, would be on the weekend. During this time, the strait continues to be closed. Hardly any vessels are going out unless they get, and those vessels that are going out are only going out if they get approval of Iran. And that's how they're going through. Now, what is Trump saying? Trump is saying, one of the things he said was, I'll come to that. Calculate said, making a lot with stocks from your geopolitical views. Only right to pay forward. Well, thank you for that, Calculate. Appreciate your huge super chat. Appreciate your support of this space. And I'm glad you're making money. I'm glad it's going well. I'm just giving out geopolitical analysis. And if it's benefiting you, then that's great. And look, I'm happy that people are benefiting from this. Obviously, my job is to give you the real news, the real information. And I think we've been kind of on point on a lot of these predictions. So I'm glad that you're making money. I don't know how to navigate the stock market myself. So obviously, I'm not someone who is making money on that. We also have... I was saying, so coming back to it. So he also said that they want to basically increase the kind of impact that they're going to have on Project Freedom. So they're going to increase the purview of Project Freedom. They're going to basically be a lot more aggressive in it. But one thing he said was that Project Freedom, as in what the project that's happened in the Strait of Hormuz, will merely be one element of a larger element group of military action. So for me, that seems to suggest that war is coming. And I know it sounds like I've been saying that for a while. And I know at one point when everybody thought there was going to be a deal, I was still adamant that war was coming. But it does seem like more and more and more that the escalation is going to increase significantly. And we'll have to wait and see where that was. I mean, someone mentioned in the chat, they said Friday. Yeah, that makes sense because the markets will close. And then if he wants to become and basically escalate, he will have to. I mean, he can do. Washington Post said that the Iran war is now hitting global food production. The war in Iran, because of the US disruption of the Strait of Hormuz, is impacting key fertilizers, fuel, and shipping, and has caused diesel and fertilizer prices to surge across Asia. Didn't we say that? If you look at many of the guests that we had, many of the experts we had, like Simon, like Darkside, like Robert, like Gary, all of them were saying that these are going to be major supply issues with the supply chain. And this is what's happening now. Now the Wall Street Journal has caught up to what we were saying. But you were hearing it on this space 2 months ago, 3 months ago. We're at what, day 73 now? We were saying this 73 days ago, 72 days ago, 71 days ago. This is how far ahead we are than the mainstream media when it comes to news. So yeah, that's what's happening right now. We should have on Dimitri Lascaris, who's coming on in about 8 minutes. And then we've got one more interview, and then we'll get back into the space for a conversation. Thank you to Zaf with the super chat as well. Appreciate your support of the space as well. Okay, sorry, I was giving you the news. That was oops, where's it gone? Many think that Keir Starmer, Beatrix's neighbor, may be resigning. I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but there is conversations happening that they will. I mean, I just can't see logically they would do that unless they were to cause more riots and civil unrest and various other things. But other than that, I don't see them doing it personally at this point. You know, it was really funny when we found out that the US, the British carriers and the French carriers were going to the Middle East, and then basically Iran said, listen, any of you to come, you're going to get hit. And then as soon as he said that, Macron said, no, 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 we're not going. We're not coming. We're not coming to the Strait of Hormuz. Don't hit us. Keir Starmer. That's a joke. Okay. Okay, so Robert Kagan, a neocon American, says in the Atlantic today that the US is heading towards total defeat in its war with Iran, with consequences that can neither be repaired nor ignored. Despite 37 days of devastating US and Israeli strikes that killed much of Iran's leadership and crippled its military, this is according to the report, obviously this is fake, I don't believe this, and it's 39 days. Tehran made no concessions, and Trump halted attacks after Iran's March 18 retaliation on Qatar's Ras Laffan gas plant, causing damage that will take years to repair. Kagan says Iran will keep the Strait of Hormuz, gaining global leverage over energy supplies, dictating terms to Gulf states, and emerging stronger alongside allies China and Russia. He warns the war has exposed America as a paper tiger, depleted weapon stocks, and accelerated a post-American world, potentially encouraging Xi Jinping on Taiwan and Putin in Europe. I mean, obviously this guy's just a drama queen, but yeah, that was interesting. I mentioned that the Israelis are complaining because they need more soldiers. They said they need a lot more soldiers because it's not looking good for them. They are getting completely decimated on the ground and they don't know what to do. They don't know what to do because they're getting decimated so badly on the ground. One second. I just seen someone use. Give me 2 seconds. Israel, in Kiryat Shimona in Israel, or residents of it are saying that they're receiving automated phone calls from Hezbollah saying, quote, this is a warning. Evacuate the city while you still can. The city is ours. When we arrive, we will decide whether to capture you or not. So that's interesting. And we had Lamine Yamal raising the Palestinian flag in front of everybody after Barcelona won the La Liga and they were doing an open bus parade. So yeah, that was awesome to see. People from Bahrain continue to protest on the streets of Bahrain. Now, what's happened is, as you know, the government of Bahrain is arresting these people. Is any person who attempts to protest, they've been arrested. Even if you don't protest, if you are a Shia Muslim, the leadership in Bahrain, the monarchy in Bahrain are arresting these people, are essentially arresting them are torturing them, and then for some of them is deporting them as well. Okay, let me have this ready. Dimitri's coming on now, any minute now. Great journalist. So I'm just gonna get this ready to tweet out. Guys, tweet the tweet in the nest, both of them for me. That would be awesome. Dimitri Lascaris joins now. Okay, so he should be coming on. So that should be good. Okay, and let's see what else we got. Awesome. Okay. As I mentioned, there's 2 tweets in the nest. The ones on the right, obviously the ones that are Substack. One is the YouTube link, if you guys can quote tweet that. And the second thing is the video, if you can quote tweet that for me as well. We got a huge lineup tomorrow as well. It's like gigantic lineup. We got in the evening, we got Ryan Dawson, Professor Pape, and Larry Johnson. And during the day, we have who's the third person we got? I keep forgetting. It's Dr. Atusa, I know that. It's Harrison Smith. It's David Icke. And it's one other person, but I can't remember who that person is. Let me see who it was again. It's kind of annoying me now. You know when you're trying to remember who it was. That's gonna be a great interview. That is gonna be a great. Like tomorrow, the lineup of 7 is immense. Click on that. Oh, and it's Professor Izadi is the 4th person. Professor Izadi. So we had Professor Marandi on today, and we got Professor Izadi on tomorrow. So that's going to be really good. Really good interviews. It's going to be fire. So yeah, watch out for that. Guys, in the chat, let me know your thoughts. UAE. Do you think should Iran hit UAE first or Israel first? When this war restarts, who should they hit first? The UAE or Israel? Let me know your thoughts in the comments right now in the chat. Let me know. I just want to welcome Dimitri Lascaris onto the show. He is a citizen journalist. He's been on the ground in Iran. He's been on the ground in Lebanon. And obviously he has his own YouTube show, which is called Reason to Resist. Dimitri, thank you so much for taking your time out to join us. How are you?
I'm doing fine, Suleiman. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for taking your time out to join us. Always appreciate you coming on. So, Dimitri, we've got lots to talk about. Lots of news coming out today. The first piece of news is Trump says the negotiations are on life support. There's 1% chance that they would succeed. He's not happy with the Iranians. He wasn't happy with the Iranian deal that was sent to them, and it was immediately rejected by him. What's your thoughts on that?
What else is new? So the Iranians have been, impressively consistent in their position, their negotiating position.
Yeah.
Whether Trump likes it or not, this is a clear sign that the Iranian side feels very comfortable in the strength of their position, in the reasonableness of their position, and is not inclined to capitulate or isn't impressed in the slightest by Donald Trump's threats. So they're standing by their guns on the lifting of sanctions. They're standing by their guns on the unfreezing of Iranian assets. They're standing by their guns on Iran retaining control of the Strait of Hormuz. They want a ceasefire in Lebanon. They're demanding that there be a complete and real ceasefire in Lebanon. They want some form of compensation for the criminal acts that have been committed against them in violation of the UN Charter and the laws of war by Israel and the United States. I don't see any significant relaxation in the Iranian negotiating position. And what I also find interesting is they took 4 days, to get back to Donald Trump with their latest offer. Suleiman, I've been involved as a lawyer. I practiced law for over 30 years, and that is my main gig. It's not journalism. I've been involved in dozens and dozens of settlement negotiations. And a standard tactic when you want to convey strength to the other side is take your time responding to their offers, right? Just relax, sit back, and, let them sweat. That's what the Iranians did here. And Donald Trump, in his comments to the media a few hours ago, he seemed to be insulted by that. He doesn't seem to understand. A man of his negotiating sophistication, we're told, he's the great deal maker. He doesn't seem to understand the message that was intended to be sent by that the Iranians are not feeling any pressure. So where are we now? We are exactly where we were, when the ceasefire was entered into. We are miles apart. The parties are miles apart. They have not said anything publicly and officially which would lead a reasonable observer to conclude that they have common ground on any issue, Suleiman. Whether we're talking about the Strait of Hormuz, whether we're talking about sanctions, the unfreezing of assets, the U.S. military bases in the region, the ceasefire in Lebanon, there is zero overlap between the positions of the United States and Iran, which means that there will be no negotiated settlement. And the real question now is, what is the United States going to do about the fact that Iran maintains control over the Strait of Hormuz? That's the real issue. And as far as I can tell, they have no military solution to that problem.
And talking about military solution, well, one of the things that he spoke about today, there's a few elements. One was he talked about expanding Project Freedom. I believe he was talking about how he was going to import Project Prosperity, what he did in the it was a Project Prosperity Guardian, which he did in the Red Sea against the Ansarullah, and he said that he was going to now implement possibly that in the what you call it again in the Strait of Hormuz. What's your thoughts on that?
That was a disaster. That operation, the Red Sea, failed completely to open up the Bandar al-Mandab Strait. That was ultimately, done as a result of a supposed ceasefire in Palestine. But I recently interviewed the acting foreign minister of Yemen on my own program, and he was quite clear that if it is requested by the Iranian government that they close, or they wouldn't completely shut it down, what they would do is they would restrict access to the strait to hostile nations and to anybody who's complicit in the genocide or the attacks on Iran. But that would be a catastrophe for the Europeans and the Americans and countries that are allied with them. And he made quite clear that they're prepared to do it. Ultimately, he said, the decision will be ours. We're not simply going to take orders from Iran, but we stand in solidarity with Iran. So this is a major, major card that has not been played. And that demonstrated that the United States, even with the help of all of NATO, that project, that attempt to reopen the Bandar al-Mandab Strait was supported by virtually the entirety of NATO, and it failed. So this is a card they haven't played. They're also talking, the Iranians, about playing the card of cutting or disabling cables in the Red Sea, in the Persian Gulf, that transmit huge amounts of internet traffic. They have not, there's a lot of oil and gas infrastructure, water desalination plants they could take out without much effort. They haven't done that. Iran has a lot of cards left to play. The United States has no cards left to play, other than the nuclear card.
Well, yeah, and we'll talk about that, and that is a risk in itself, though, because unfortunately, what sometimes happens is when someone doesn't have a rational decision to make, they become even more extremely irrational, and that's, I guess, one of the concerns that we have. But one of the things he mentioned today was, he said Project Freedom. It's so much contradiction, but another thing he mentioned was Project Freedom, that he was going to restart Project Freedom, and it was going to be a very small element in a much more larger military endeavor that they take part in. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, this is going to blow up the entire region. I mean, it has been demonstrated beyond a shadow of a doubt that the United States doesn't even have the capacity to protect its own military bases in the region. The situation is so bad that even the major corporate media outlets in the United States, including the Washington Post, the New York Times, and CNN, have reported that numerous U.S. military bases in the region have been rendered unusable. So if the United States cannot protect its own military bases in the region and its most valuable radar installations and its transport aircraft, and we saw what happened when they tried to mount that huge military operation inside Iran at Esfahan. That was a complete debacle where they lost in one day $400 to $500 million worth of aircraft. If they weren't able to protect their own military bases, pull off that operation in Esfahan, what reason would any rational person have to believe that expanding the hot war in Iran is going to result in a different outcome? It won't. It is going to simply give Iran a reason to retaliate through escalatory actions that it has not yet taken. And by the way, I'm sorry about, there may be some noise in the background, but I'm unfortunately having to do this from a hotel lobby.
No, we appreciate you coming on, because I was like, oh yeah, this time, and you fitted us in, so I really appreciate it. I changed it a few times as well, so thank you so much. Now, another question I have for you is, we had a report today, Trump is speaking to his national security advisors. Netanyahu was also speaking to his national security advisors. Apparently, Trump and Netanyahu may have also got on the phone together. That one, I didn't fully verify, but the first two elements did happen. It does seem like he's got his meeting he's going to China on Wednesday. He's returning on Friday. It does seem like everything's geared towards war. What's your thoughts?
Yes, I think that's exactly where we're heading, Suleiman. If there's no overlap between the negotiating positions of the parties, and that's quite clear at this stage, and Iran retains control of the Strait of Hormuz, and it's quite clear at this stage that it does, and the United States is unwilling to allow it to remain that way, that would be a true strategic disaster for the United States. If Iran now has permanent control over the Strait of Hormuz, effectively controls 20 to 30% of the world's oil supply, and can charge, substantial tolls amounting to tens of billions of dollars a year, which would be used by the Iranian government, undoubtedly, to strengthen the capacity of the state to defend itself. That would be a complete strategic disaster. So what is Trump going to do? If he's not willing to make any concessions, if he's not willing to leave the Strait of Hormuz in control of the Islamic Republic, he will resort to military action. It's inevitable. And the Israelis aren't even, subtle about this. They want a resumption of the war. They're quite clear about that. And we all know how influential they are in the White House. So I've been saying for some time now, from the very day that they departed Islamabad, with J.D. Vance saying that the Americans had put on the table their best and final offer after 21 hours of negotiation. From that very moment, I've been saying that the hot war is coming again. It's an inevitability, and I hope very much I'm wrong, but I'm more convinced of that than ever.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement with you. I've always thought that the war was going to restart. They're just too far apart in their negotiation demands. Lebanon is just a deal that can't be made. The missile program is a deal that can't be made. The resistance is a deal that can't be made. And so, nuclear, I always thought that there is a possibility. You can have a bit of flexibility. You can have I didn't think that was that much of a complicated deal. But even before this war started, I always thought there would be a war because of those other elements. And I think the same thing as you. I think the war will continue for the very same elements. Now, another thing that we had a report on today was, well, I'll come to that in a second, but that was it. Today, the report came out. It was last night, and it wasn't really a report. It was basically Senator Kelly. Senator Kelly came out and said, America's depleted. America's depleted in their attack missiles. They're depleted in their defense interceptor missiles. They're massively depleted to the point where they are basically laid bare. And if there ever was a confrontation, possibly in the future with China, they just won't be able to basically conduct that war. Hegseth came out, and you're a lawyer, so you understand the smartness of Hegseth. The contradictory statement, he said, You are leaking classified information, which is crime, although what you're saying is fake. So I don't know how it's fake that you leak. How could it be fake, but then you're leaking classified information? But that being said, what's your thoughts on A, Hexet, and B, the fact that America is again, we're getting more and more confirmation about everything we've been saying, which is the depletion of war supplies.
Well, this senator is simply repeating what's been reported in the press. The corporate media has talked about the depletion of the Patriot air defense missiles, of the Tomahawks, of the JASSMs, of just about every important munition in the American arsenal has been heavily depleted. So I don't know what Hexeth is talking about. I mean, that train has left the station, man. The whole world knows about this now. And even if it hadn't been admitted by the U.S. corporate media, it would have been a very logical inference for us to draw based upon the gigantic amounts of munition that have been expended, not just on Iran, but in Palestine and Lebanon and in Ukraine. Clearly, the Americans are running low on these essential munitions. You don't have to be a military expert to figure that out. So that just sounds to me like more, desperation, Hegseth drivel. At the end of the day, this is a serious problem for the United States, and I think it could be the most important reason why they haven't attacked Iran yet. That is a serious bone of contention between the Pentagon and the White House about what to do, because they are obviously, I'm sure the Pentagon is very, very concerned about this issue.
There were reports last week that said that the Gulf states weren't happy with Trump. Israel also wasn't. And part of the reason the claim that it is about them not being happy is they feel like Trump is too desperate for a deal, whereas they think that Trump should show some backbone and go to war. What's your kind of thoughts on that dynamic?
I think this is, it's a kabuki theater. I think the United States and Israel are on exactly the same page. And, this is something I've talked about a fair bit. The United States government loves to occasionally portray itself as being at odds with the Israeli government. So you may recall, for example, that this was something we heard quite a bit when Biden was the president and Israel was carrying out the mass slaughter of Palestinian children before the eyes of the world. Occasionally, unnamed officials of the U.S. government would go to the corporate press and would say, Biden's very upset with Netanyahu, he's very frustrated with Netanyahu, and yet he kept giving, the bombs that Netanyahu needed in order to carry out the mass slaughter of Palestinians. Never withheld them, not for one moment. So the reason why the United States government likes to do this is to convey, to the public that there's tension between the White House and the Israeli government, is because it enables the White House to blame the Israeli government when things go wrong, right? And they also get to look like the sort of responsible, ethical actors, and it's those nasty Israelis who use these disreputable methods from time to time, and we don't like it, but they're a sovereign state, and we can't tell them what to do, and blah, blah, blah. We've been listening to this kabuki theater for years, but when push comes to shove, and Donald Trump is faced with a choice of making concessions to Iran or taking a maximalist position, he always takes the maximalist position, just like he did today, which is exactly the same position as Israel. It's maximalist. They're on the same page. Don't believe that there are divisions between them. I don't believe there are. They are on a mission to destroy Iran. And the only way they will stop is if they are removed from office, or there is so much protest and anger amongst the voters in the United States that Trump finally decides for his own political survival he has to pull the plug on this war.
What's your what about the Gulf states though? Because I understand what Israel, but the Gulf states. And the reason I say that is this was the report made about the Gulf states. There was also, if you remember, Project Freedom. The claim about Project Freedom was Saudi Arabia and Kuwait said US can't use their airspace. And apparently the reason they said it was because they weren't happy that America didn't respond to the alleged attacks against the UAE. They said it didn't meet the threshold. And then because of that, they said you can't use our airspace. Trump got on a phone with MBS, possibly assured him that they would strike. They did strike the next day at Qasem Island, at Bandar Abbas, and at Sariq. So doesn't that seem to suggest that report could be true? I guess, what's your thoughts on the Gulf states kind of view on this then?
I don't buy it, not for 1 second. The Gulf states, first of all, this story that Saudi Arabia forced Trump to give up Project Freedom was first reported in NBC. Okay, I read that report very carefully, and when they asked a Saudi official, an unnamed Saudi official, whether this was true, the Saudi official not only declined to confirm that the story was true, but actually suggested that the whole narrative was problematic. Okay? Then, I think it was the next day or 2 days later, another Saudi official, or maybe it was the same one, went to Agence France Presse and said the story is fake. That Saudi Arabia didn't stop the United States from carrying out Project Freedom, and even went so far as to say that the United States has been free to use military installations in Saudi Arabia and Saudi airspace regularly. That's what the source said. The Saudis have an incentive to lie on this issue. They want Iran to believe that they are not cooperating with the United States because they don't want to be destroyed. Okay, and they also are very concerned about domestic public opinion as well, because there are a lot of people in Saudi Arabia who are extremely hostile to Israel. And they don't want their government to be doing anything that is helping the Israelis to carry out, a project of expansionism and, hegemonic control of the region. So for those reasons, they have a motive to lie and to suggest to the media, the compliant corporate media, that they're not cooperating with the U.S., that they're being difficult with the U.S. I don't buy it for 1 second. The Saudis are 100% on, just like Israel, they are 100% on board. I believe strongly that that's the case. These people have all of this massive wealth that the Saudis have, the Saudi elite has, is dependent upon the patronage and the protection of the U.S. military. And furthermore, they have seen with their own eyes what the United States and Israel do to leaders of predominantly Arab and Muslim states who do not take orders from Washington. They kill them. And they not only kill them, they kill their families too. So I don't believe for 1 second that the Saudis have the spine to tell the United States, hey, you know what? As much as you want the Strait of Hormuz to be opened, we're going to stop you from conducting military operations to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. I don't believe it for 1 second.
How does, I guess, as part of the negotiations, an important element obviously is the Strait of Hormuz. Now, the Gulf states would never want a scenario where Iran controls unilaterally the Strait of Hormuz. How could they ever come to an agreement pertaining to that issue?
I don't believe they ever will. I mean, unless they're forced, they have a gun to their head. They're going to do everything they can to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. You think they're going to want to pay $2 million for every vessel that passes through the Strait of Hormuz to the Iranians? Out of the question. They understand perfectly well that if Iran maintains permanent control over the Strait of Hormuz, it will become the most powerful state in the region by far, and exercise tremendous leverage over their own economies. Not just the most powerful region, but will have the ability to destroy their own economies. So they are desperate to see the Strait of Hormuz reopened, control of it be taken away from Iran. And the idea that they're going to block the United States from trying to do that is laughable. It's laughable.
But it wasn't a block, right? You don't think there's a possibility that they got angry with Trump that he didn't respond to the UAE, and you use it as a leverage to basically make him attack the Iran?
No, I think that they're perfectly capable of complaining to Trump. I'm sure that they can have differences of opinion. I'm sure that they're perfectly capable of trying to persuade the U.S. government to pursue a different course of action than the one it might be inclined to pursue. But will they actually tell the United States, no, you can't do this when it's something that really matters to the U.S. government? Absolutely not. No way. These people do not have the spine to do that. They do not have the integrity to do that. Just look at what they've done during this 2.5 years of genocide in Gaza, Suleiman. What have they done to defend the Palestinian people, for God's sakes? The Saudis and the Emiratis and the Kuwaitis and the Bahrainis, these regimes, not the people, the regimes, supported this fraudulent peace plan, this board of peace, which has basically been a cover for the continuation of a genocide against the Palestinian people. No one should have any confidence whatsoever in any of these regimes to do the right thing, not with respect to Iran, not with respect to Yemen, Palestine, Lebanon. They are traitors, period. They're only in it for themselves.
Completely agree with you. One last question on this kind of strand of conversation. You reported, I believe it was a few weeks ago, that you were under the impression, or you'd been told by some source, that there was a possibility of a ground invasion. Do you still believe that to be the case? And the reason I asked that question is because as things are escalating significantly, we see, for example, a lot of ground troops in the region. I mean, the option is they could do more. Like, basically, what I'm trying to say is there's 4 options. There's get a deal. There's do more of the same, as in you go back to bombing exactly what you did in the first 39 days. The third option is you do a limited campaign of ground troops like they did in south of Isfahan. Or the last one is a full-on ground invasion. But I know one of your sources said that there was a possibility they'd had that there would be a ground invasion.
Yes, this is about 3 weeks ago. Somebody who formerly worked in U.S. military intelligence advised that a ground operation was going to occur, and that was most likely, that's the way he put it, to be the port of Chabahar, near on the Iranian coast near Pakistan. Now, he didn't put a time frame on it, but it sounded like it was something that he believed was likely to happen in the short term. I have not had any further update from him since then. I think it's possible, but I think, I mean, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see the United States attempt some limited ground operation somewhere. But I think it's likely to be more theatrical than anything. And what they're probably going to focus upon is the same tactics they've employed up until now, which is to say standoff weapons, bombs, destroying as much of the civilian infrastructure as possible, which means that there is going to be massive retaliation. And I'm sorry to sound like a broken record on this, but I think we're headed towards a global economic crisis. And unfortunately, all signs suggest that it will be necessary for people in the West to endure a global economic crisis to finally come to their senses and force their governments to put an end to this war.
No doubt, no doubt. I think that is the prevailing thought, that it's confirmed now. We're going to be in a recession. The question is whether it's going to move to a depression or not. Now, Dimitri, another thing that you've covered quite extensively is Lebanon. Can you give us an overarching view on what's happening in Lebanon in the last couple of weeks?
Well, there have been a number of very interesting videos that the Resistance has published. They just published a video showing a drone strike on an Iron Dome battery.
Yeah.
And immediately after they struck the battery, they hit a gathering of soldiers Israeli soldiers beside the battery. They have, the Israeli media reported today that in northern occupied Palestine, close to the settlement of Manada, an Israeli reservist was killed. He is the 18th soldier to have died since the hostilities recommenced in March 2nd, according to the Israelis, and the 5th Israeli soldier to have been killed since this so-called ceasefire went into effect. The Israelis are, as far as I can tell, Suleiman, we always have to take what they say about their casualties with a large grain of salt. I think that they are suffering higher levels of casualties on the Lebanese front than they have at any time during this 2.5 years of warfare, because, in large part, because of Hezbollah's increasing use and very effective use of fiber optic drones. And the Israelis typically are responding to these heavy casualties with the savagery to which we've all become accustomed. The Lebanese Health Ministry reported on Saturday, I believe it was, that the Israelis on that day alone had killed 39 people, including a child, and wounded numerous other children. So it is also clear that the Israelis are trying to convert southern Lebanon into a dead zone where no human beings can live. But I think it's equally clear to those who are paying careful attention to the evidence that the Israelis will not control that dead zone. It's just going to be devoid of people for some time, but the Israelis are sitting ducks in the south of Lebanon with those fiber optic drones. And they will continue to sustain heavy casualties no matter how much they bomb the civilian population if they keep their soldiers in South Lebanon.
I was speaking to some people in South Lebanon, and they were saying that they felt like Israelis were a lot more, what's the right word to use? That basically in 2006 and in 2024, if you remember, with only minimal loss of life, they basically took their tail between their legs and ran. This time they've basically, I know you're saying what the Israelis say, I hear that there's been possibly even thousands of lives of Israeli soldiers being lost, but if that's the case, wherever the number is, what I'm being told is that the Israelis are a lot more accommodating in terms of willing to sacrifice more lives this time, and they're not as averse to it. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, that may be, but they've been doing this for 2.5 years, and this is a military that is constructed for short-term conflicts. So they're in a very, very bad shape. There's plenty of evidence coming out from sources within Israel that there's a mental health crisis in the Israeli military of unprecedented proportions. Huge numbers of reservists are refusing to show up for duty. We're seeing extraordinary lack of professionalism on the part of the Israeli military. So, for example, you probably saw this video, Suleiman, where some Israeli soldiers were trying to load a wounded soldier onto a helicopter in South Lebanon, and there were like 25 or 30 of them congregated in a very tight space, making themselves a juicy target for a Hezbollah drone. And one came in, as a matter of fact, and ended up killing and wounding some soldiers who were standing there. It's just sort of standard practice when you're operating in a war zone. I know this, and I'm a civilian. When I've gone to South Lebanon and when I was in Iran, you don't stand in open air in large groups when there are enemy drones in the sky. This is just sort of basic fundamentals of military tactics. And so you're seeing, this is just one example. You have plenty of examples of Israeli soldiers showing appalling lack of discipline and professionalism in the field. And so I think all the signs are that this is a military force that is in a state of collapse. So they may be willing to sustain far higher casualties than they have been in the past, but how long is this going to last? How long can this they can hold this army together? I think they're in serious trouble.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they're going to be struggling a lot. What's your thoughts on kind of tactically? I'm seeing them move into certain areas, demolish buildings. What's your kind of thoughts on the way this specific Kinetic part of the war is being conducted?
Well, it's par for the course, right? I mean, they can't. The Israelis, if they can't conquer territory, they destroy it, as they did with Gaza. They were not able to disarm Hamas or defeat Hamas or the other resistance groups in Gaza, so they simply leveled it to the ground. The problem that the Israelis have, quite apart from the fact that this is just making them even more hated around the world, is that once you destroy all the infrastructure, they have nowhere to hide. Where are their soldiers going to seek shelter? That's one of the reasons why they're sitting ducks in South Lebanon, because they have no infrastructure in which they themselves can seek protection from drone strikes. So it's a two-edged sword. And as I say, it is simply destroying whatever standing, if any, that Israel has in the world, that it continues to engage in these appalling acts of criminality in civilian areas that they try to conquer.
No doubt. This has always been the Israeli way. They don't care about anything. In terms of Lebanon, though, this is obviously very complicated. How do you see this resolving?
It's a tough one, Suleiman. I have an easier time predicting what the outcome is going to be with Iran.
Yeah.
But I think eventually, they're going to inflict a lot more damage on our Lebanese brothers and sisters. Sadly, they have the capacity to do it. The Lebanese National Army is not willing, by all indications, to come to the defense of the territory of Lebanon. So it's going to come down to the resistance, and the resistance. What it can do through a war of attrition is continuously inflict casualties upon Israeli soldiers in South Lebanon and northern occupied Israel. And I do believe eventually Israel is going to throw in the towel and will withdraw from these areas. But there's going to be tremendous devastation in the south of Lebanon. There already is. And it'll probably get worse, which will take a long time for Lebanon to recover from, sadly.
How do they come to a deal? And what I mean by that is, Iran's trying to include Lebanon into the deal, but then you have the Israelis involved. How do they? And then you've got basically the Lebanese government involved. They vehemently dislike Hezbollah. How do they kind of square that circle?
It's a very complex situation. I think ultimately this is going to be decided on the battlefield. A lot of blood is going to be shed, and both in Iran, in the Gulf states, in Israel, in Lebanon. But ultimately, I do believe that not just the Israeli military, the state of Israel is heading towards collapse. It cannot survive in its current form, and people there. My prediction at the beginning of this horror was that eventually there would be a realization amongst many living within Israel that Israel is not a sanctuary for the Zionist, Zionist members of the Jewish community internationally. That it is a very dangerous place for them to live, and there will be an outflow of colonists from the Zionist entity over the next several years that will make it practically impossible for Israel to continue to dominate the Palestinian population. So I believe that my best sense of where this is heading ultimately is that Israel will suffer a strategic defeat in the so-called demographic war, resulting in the resurrection of the state of Palestine. And I don't think that is an optimistic assessment. I think it is a realistic assessment of where all of this is heading. But I readily acknowledge that there is, I'm sad to say, going to be a lot of bloodshed in the interim.
We're just seeing reports right now. This we're just looking at apparently Trump is moving 2 nuclear submarines, and what I mean by that is showing them visibly, I guess, in a way to threaten Iran. One near Gibraltar, and I just can't remember what the second one was. But what's your thoughts on that? Again, is this Trump posturing, or do you think there's something more to it?
What is he going to do with the nuclear submarines? Fire more Tomahawks at Iran? I mean, he doesn't need nuclear submarines to send nukes, and I don't think Trump is ultimately going to go there. There's more of a risk that Netanyahu will. But if the intention is simply to, enhance the U.S. military's ability to launch Tomahawk missiles at Iran, there's absolutely no reason to believe that's going to change the outcome. And what it will do is provoke a retaliatory response from the Iranian military, and result probably in the depending upon how much this spirals out of control, we could end up in a world where the majority of the oil and gas infrastructure in the Gulf region is completely obliterated. That's all this is ultimately going to do. So there's only one way out of this mess, and that is Donald Trump has to pay the piper. Donald Trump has to make concessions to the government of Iran. It is as simple as that. And there's no evidence he's there yet.
How likely do you think that is? And what I mean by that is, I think we're both in agreement that we think there's going to be kinetic war. Will Trump basically do more of what he did in the past? And what I mean by that is, in the past, I know there were some instances, South Pars is an example, but that was the Israelis. But generally speaking, he kind of did stay away from important, critical nuclear infrastructure, desalination plants. I know, again, there was random incidences, but generally speaking. But he did threaten to do so. Mm-hmm. How likely is it, do you think, that he does something like that, in the sense of he does actually go for these critical infrastructures? Because as you said quite clearly, and I'm totally in agreement with you, that if they were to go for those infrastructures, Iran would fire at those same infrastructures in the Gulf state. Like, my question is to you that we agree that they're going to strike, but do you think they'll strike those infrastructures?
I think they probably will try to avoid that as long as possible, because they've probably figured out by now what the retaliatory strikes are going to look like. But I don't know. I just don't see how we're going to avoid that point, because there's just so little overlap between the positions. There's no overlap between the negotiating positions of the United States and Iran. And Iran and the United States will be hell bent on preventing Iran from maintaining the control over the Strait of Hormuz. So, as Robert Pape, the professor at University of Chicago, who specializes in escalation, has said, we are in the belligerents are in an escalation trap, and it will continue to get worse. And ultimately, it is going to be, I think, the pain caused to the global economy, which is going to force Trump's hand. And we're not even remotely close there yet. You see the stock markets are hitting all-time highs, as amazing as that is. The price of oil in the futures market is actually it's manageable, even though it's gone up substantially. Inflation is on the rise in the United States. Gas prices are on the rise, but they're not nearly at record levels. So we have not yet seen the kind of pain in the economies of the West, and particularly the United States, which will force Trump to restrain himself. And so I think he's going to continue to go up the escalation ladder until we hit the pain threshold of the American people.
Yeah, we've got Robert Pape coming on tomorrow, and I am going to make him break down the escalation trap. But he believes there's going to be a ground invasion. But in terms of then what you're saying, but just think about like the actual ramifications of what you're saying. You're saying Trump is going to strike at some point Iran's critical infrastructure. That will result in Iran doing the exact same thing in the Gulf states. That makes the Gulf states completely inoperable. It basically destroys their nations. After that, there's no way there could ever be a deal. Then you would see major escalation. It would end up being. You don't think that would then result in this kind of future ground invasion? Because now you're basically just spiraled out of control.
Oh, I'm not excluding the possibility of a ground invasion. I think that it may well happen. I don't think he's ready to do it yet, but he might be. But I think Professor Pape is probably right. Eventually, this is where the U.S. will go. There's just no indication that I cannot stress this enough. The position of the United States is completely inflexible and maximalist, and I have not seen any moderation in its position at all. If anything, its negotiating position has become even more maximalist. For example, they're talking about Iran handing over its enriched uranium to the United States, not to a third party. This is a complete deal breaker. It's inconceivable that the Iranians are going to give their enriched uranium to the United States. Inconceivable. This was a new demand. I think previously the Trump regime had indicated it was willing to see the enriched uranium go to somebody else, like, for example, Russia, acting as a custodian. So it's hard to imagine how we don't go up the escalation ladder all the way eventually to a ground invasion.
And for me, the crazy part of all of this is you're seeing these things happen. It's going to escalate. Trump does have an opportunity to make a deal, but then we both know there's no chance he can make a deal, because even in this kind of amazing world where he didn't have these maximalist demands, he still has Israel, and Israel will never let him make a deal. And the thing with Iran is, I know I've been sometimes a little bit critical, for example, them being a bit more amiable to the Gulf states. I think the foreign minister came out yesterday and said, look, we want a situation where we know we live in prosperity. We don't want to harm the Gulf states. We would prefer not to do so. That shows a lot of movement, because these Gulf states have actually helped kill your daughters, kill your children, Arab school you went to. And so you are seeing you are seeing some movement by Iran, but none from the United States of America. What's your thoughts on some people who maybe think that Iran is maybe willing to give up too much?
That may have been the case, but I don't believe that that's the case any longer. They've been very good, very skillful at moderating their position in ways that are that conserve their bottom line and that are more, shall we say, superficial than substantive. So I think that there is now uniformity within the leadership, both political and military, in Iran, and it may have taken them a little bit too long to get there, that the United States government is agreement incapable. And I think they all understand that the United States government, its ultimate objective, as is the objective of Israel, is to destroy Iran. They don't want peace. They don't even want regime change, Suleiman. They want to destroy Iran. I have great difficulty believing that anybody within the senior position of the Iranian government has not understood this by now.
What's your thoughts on some people, again, who support Iran, but because they're going against Zionism, but maybe aren't impressed with how long it takes sometimes Iran to respond? And what I mean by that is, we know, you know, I know, we all know, even Iranian leadership know, Trump is manipulating the market. He is getting people like Barack Ravid and Axios and various others to basically be his mouthpiece to manipulate the stock market, to manipulate the oil market. And sometimes the response of Iran takes a bit too long. What's your thoughts on kind of that situation? And why that's, because I know some people will be like, well, Iran doesn't care. But they do, because the closure of the strait is what to cause economic pressures and financial pressures. And if it's not causing economic financial pressures on the United States of America, the belligerent, and it's only going to cause it on other countries, then you're not achieving your goal. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I think Iran's leadership is very concerned about being perceived by the billions of people in the world who will suffer as a result of this economic crisis to be to blame for it. So I think that they are trying hard to be seen as the restrained, diplomatic, moderate party in this war. They will ultimately be held to pay because of how much damage this is going to do to the global economy. So I think that this is very important for them to position themselves as the reasonable actors in this fight. But also, it's very hard for me personally. I find it very difficult to judge Iran's leadership when it comes to things like this, Suleiman, because there are things I don't know. So, for example, it may be to their advantage to drag these things out and to show restraint. For example, maybe they need time to dig out missiles that have been buried under the rubble. Maybe they need time to reconstitute their missile launchers. Maybe they need time to import components for the production of missiles and drones from other countries like China or Russia. So there may be a number of internal sort of military industrial constraints operating on them, which convince them that time is to their advantage as well. And so they're not rushing things because they stand to gain from these delays. It's hard to say because there's so much information we don't have about what is going on inside Iran and inside its military industrial complex.
Now, in terms of the nuclear enrichment, I just had Professor Marandi on just before you came on, and he said, look, there's going to be zero, there won't be, basically the conversation what Trump make, or what's been reported is, by the mainstream media, I believe they're saying that the Americans now want 12 years where there's no nuclear enrichment. And apparently, according to mainstream media, they're saying Iran is willing to go to 3 and 5 years. I asked Professor Miranda, and he was like, all those numbers are fake. Like, Iran hasn't even discussed the nuclear, and there's not gonna be any movement on it. Peter Parsi, again, someone who I like a lot, we have him on a lot. He was saying that actually Iran would be willing to do 5 years, and the reason for that is because if you look at the power plants, they already have 5 years worth of enrichment where they could continue using it. It wouldn't impact their production, but then would give Trump the win he needs. And then after 5 years, they then can enrich uranium, and then therefore the power plant has no impact. So I guess taking all of those things into consideration, where do you think things lie at the moment? Do you think both sides are posturing, and they may come to some kind of deal which is close to what Trita says, or do you think this is a no-go?
Well, they have a substantial stockpile of highly enriched uranium. If they were forced, I don't know, I don't have the technical expertise to tell you how long they could sustain their civilian nuclear program without any further enrichment. But given the fact that they do have a significant stockpile of highly enriched uranium, it is clear that they could continue to operate a civilian nuclear program for some time, whether it's 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, I don't know. I don't know enough about these issues to be able to give you that level of precision, but they can continue to operate their civilian nuclear program for some time without any further enrichment. So this would be something, it would be effectively a cost-free concession to Trump. And I think it would be perfectly sensible for them to do that if it would result in an overall deal. What is the price to them? What is the cost to them of stopping enrichment for a period of, let's say, 5 years, if they still have enough enriched uranium in their stockpile to continue operating in their civilian nuclear facilities? Why wouldn't you do that deal? I would do that deal if it means that you get your sanctions lifted and the assets are unfrozen and you get to retain control of the Strait of Hormuz and the bloodshed stops in Lebanon, well, absolutely, it would be crazy for them not to do that deal.
I agree with you.
Yeah, but are they going to give up forever nuclear enrichment? That's out of the question. It's not happening. And this is one of the reasons why I say more war is inevitable, because this is the position of the Trump regime, that they have to stop enriching. I think they're going even further. They're saying you have to dismantle all of your civilian nuclear facilities and give us, the United States, the people who have been ravaging your country, your highly enriched uranium. This is a guarantee of more war.
So in terms of war, we've seen a major build-up, huge build-up. It's more than even before February the 28th. They've got 3 USS aircraft carriers. They have more fighter jets. They have more destroyers. They have more KC tankers. They have more carrier groups. They have more missiles. They've got the hypersonic missile as well, 8 of them. If they were to use everything they've got now, they could go for longer than 39 days this time. And they could cause a lot more damage as well. What's your thoughts on that?
I'm sorry. I was being handed a bill that I'm supposed to pay here in the lobby of the hotel. So could you please repeat the question?
Yeah, sorry. No worries, no worries. You gotta pay your bills. Make sure you tip. We're not Israeli. But coming back to it, sorry. What I was saying was we've seen a huge build-up, right? The first one before February the 28th. The build-up we're seeing now is a lot larger than the build-up we saw on February the 28th. And in February the 28th, they went for 39 days. This time, we're seeing more carrier groups, we're seeing more KC tankers, we're seeing more destroyers, we're seeing more fighter jets. It's a much more larger build-up. And even they've got the hypersonic missiles. I know there's only 8 of them, but they've got them. And so that suggests that they can go for a much more longer period of time, longer than 39 days, and cause a lot more damage. What's your thoughts on that?
The bottom line, though, is that they have heavily depleted their munitions. They only have so many bombs and tomahawks and so forth that they can use. So however many refueling tankers they may have brought into the region, how many naval ships they have, the capacity of the United States to sustain a war of high intensity for a prolonged period of time is very limited at this particular moment. It's probably at the lowest point that it has been in decades. I would suspect, and by the way, I don't think it's going to take 39 days for this to escalate to the point where the Gulf oil infrastructure is completely and utterly obliterated. This could happen in less time than that. They may be intending to sustain a campaign for longer than 39 days, but once they resume the bombing of Iran, and by the way, Suleiman, I think we'll know that we're back into the full-blown hot war when they bomb Tehran. That will be a sign that we are heading down the rabbit hole of all-out war. And it may come sooner than that, but I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of wishful thinking going on at the Pentagon, and the idea that they could sustain a war for longer than 39 days at high intensity against Iran is a bit of a pipe dream.
Yeah, it's going to be concerning. Dimitri, thank you so much for taking your time to join us. We always appreciate you coming on. We need to let you pay the bill and give you a tip as well. But, Dimitri, I know people can find you on your YouTube channel, which is Reason to Resist. Great channel. Everybody should be watching you. Where else can people find you?
Also on X, my X handle is @Dimitri Lascaris. And we also have a Rumble channel, which is called Reason to Resist.
Brilliant. Everyone, make sure you follow Dimitri on YouTube, on Rumble, and on X. Thank you so much for taking your time out to join us.
Thank you. Peace out.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you. That was Dimitri. Make sure you're following him. Great journalist. Always going on the ground, going where the action is. Guys, make sure you like this video. Make sure you share this video. Make sure you comment in the main section. Put your notifications on. He thinks there's going to be kinetic war. He thinks we're in an escalation trap. Escalate. It's going to snowball and snowball and snowball and snowball. And there's not going to be any way to stop where we're going. And where we're going is back to war. This is what he thinks. I kind of agree with him. You know my position on this. I'm not changing it throughout all of this. But that being said, guys, make sure you retweet this space. Make sure you reshare this space. Make sure you like as well. And by the way, when you subscribe, put your notifications on YouTube and put the all notifications on. What's your thoughts on what Dimitri had to say? Do you agree with him? Do you think it's going to escalate the way he's saying? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, comment, and subscribe. Okay, next we've got on Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar. He'll be coming on in about a few minutes, not long. So make sure you don't go anywhere. Let me just have it ready for him. He's great. He's a Green Beret. He served America. He served the nation. He was part of the GHF, if you remember, which was there to try and give, was there to give allegedly food to the Gazans, but in reality, it was used in order to make the people of Gaza congregate in one area, and then they basically bombed them and attacked them and shot them. And he found it to be deplorable, and he walked away from it, and he became a major whistleblower that exposed it. If you remember, he went to Tucker Carlson and exposed exactly what they were doing at the GHF. So I'm gonna write Green Beret. Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar joins. Okay, so he'll be coming on in a minute or two. Let me just see if there's any more news in these few minutes before we get Anthony Aguilar on. Let me see. There we go. Okay, that one I mentioned during it. I do look for the news while I'm interviewing, and then I'll just ask the guest as a question. So therefore, you're apprised. So Galibaf already mentioned that his statement already. So that's not new. Let me see if there's anything else. Doesn't seem like there was anything new. The UN is calling for calm while Trump says the ceasefire is on life support. So Gutierrez said a return to full-scale fighting would be catastrophic. What else have we got? Okay. The U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent made the following. Well, the Treasury Department said this, quote, today, Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control is designating 12 individuals and entities for their roles in enabling the IRGC's sale and shipments of Iranian oil to the people of Republic of China. The IRGC relies on front companies in order to do this. And Scott Bessent said, well, I need to get the full statement. But anyway, I'll read to you what Scott Bessent said and then I'll read the full statement. It says, as Iran's military desperately tries to regroup, economic fury will continue to deprive the regime of funding for its weapons program, terrorist proxies, and nuclear ambitions. Treasury will continue to cut the Iranian regime off from the financial networks it used to carry out terror acts and to destabilize the global economy. Okay, let me see what the Treasury Dramatic said because I only saw the first 4 lines of it. 1 second. Okay, so they said this. They said, today the Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control is designating 12 individuals and entities for their roles and enabling the IRGC's sale and shipment of Iranian oil to the People's Republic of China. The IRGC relies on front companies in permissive economic jurisdictions to obfuscate its role in oil sales and funnel the revenue to the Iranian regime. Instead of using this revenue to support the struggling Iranian people, the regime directs it towards weapons development, backing terrorist proxies, and funding security forces that suppress citizens' freedoms. That was the Treasury. So they're saying they've sanctioned, it seems like, 12 different, designate 12 different individuals and entities. So, I mean, we'll have to see what the ramifications of that are, but that's the claim that is being made. Let me see what else we've got. Okay, and we've got footage. I saw this in the corner of my eye when I was playing it. But Trump, there's footage now of the USS Alaska, an Ohio-class ballistic missile submarine arriving in Gibraltar yesterday, capable of staying submerged for 90 days without surfacing. Obviously, when we get back on the space, we need to ask Andrew about that. Is this posturing, or will he be able to use a submarine? We'll ask Andrew straight after this interview. There's been 100+ strikes on Lebanon in the last 24 hours. Okay, this has been reported by CBS. It says while... One second, I think it's gone. Okay, 1 second. While acting as a mediator, Pakistan secretly let Iranian military jets park on its airfield. Per CBS, US officials say Pakistan allowed Iranian military aircrafts to park at the Nurhan Air Base just outside of Islamabad, potentially shielding them from American airstrikes. Iran also... Okay, so that was interesting. Okay, let me just... I think we've got Anthony Aguilar here, so let's start. Can you hear me, Lieutenant?
I can hear you.
Okay. Just want to welcome Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar onto the show, a Green Beret who has served the country for many years, an expert, a military expert, and one of his major expertise is military equipment and the breakdown of it. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on. It's another day of a lot of breaking news.
It is indeed. It is indeed. And let's get into it. The first bit, actually, I want to go backwards. It's just a report that came out now, which was that there'd been visuals of a nuclear submarine on the shores of Gibraltar. Is this, can you tell us what, first of all, is this posturing? And if it's not posturing, what would this submarine be used for in terms of this war with Iran?
Well, the presence or the deployment or the at-sea nature of this Ohio-class nuclear submarine is not in and of itself posturing, because our submarines, unless they're in tender, in dock for maintenance, are always deployed. It is a persistent presence. What you don't often see, which I certainly think is a way of demonstration or posturing, is that it emerged and presented itself. That's very uncommon for a nuclear capable Ohio class submarine to emerge in a known position, in a known location, present to the media, to know that it's there. That is the part that is certainly seems to me as posturing in terms of the presence of a nuclear capable military asset. The truth is that that nuclear equipped warheads or nuclear equipped ordnance can also be dropped from or deployed from other capabilities that we already have in theater, like the F-35, the F-22, the B-1, the B-2, various cruisers or destroyers that can launch and or conduct maritime attack can be equipped with a nuclear warhead of various calibers and types. But this particular submarine and this particular mission is part of the mutually assured destruction the air, ground, and sea component of the nuclear triad, which it's pretty much its mission in hunt and destroy or hunt and seek is to position itself as a nuclear deterrence. So the fact that this submarine emerged and made itself known and present is certainly posturing, is certainly upping the ante in terms of escalation, and quite frankly, it's kind of what I've been fearing from the onset of this conflict, that there will not be a clean way out of this for the administration. So then what options will they seek? I think this is certainly not just posturing. It is a potential option for the president.
Yeah, this is always a concern, and as you see things escalating, nothing is off the table, right? Now, another thing that Trump mentioned is he mentioned about how he was thinking, and he mentioned many things, and some of these things are contradictory, but let's look at each element at a time, at its bit. So the first thing is Operation, what was it called again? Operation something, Prosperity Guardian, which was the operation that was done against the Ansarullah in the Bab al-Mandab, in the Red Sea. He is saying that he's going to conduct similar operation in the Strait of Hormuz. What's your thoughts on that?
Similar operations in the Red Sea as he's conducting in the Strait of Hormuz.
No, this operation he did in the Red Sea, which was the Operation Prosperity Guardian from 2023 to 2025 against Ansarullah. He's saying that he's going to use that same operation in the Strait of Hormuz.
Well, the geography, the mechanics, the military options are vastly different. You know, in the particularly in the Red Sea, you have egress and ingress options through the Gulf of Aden. You have egress and ingress options through the Suez Canal into the Mediterranean. The Red Sea is not as well, you know, it's vastly larger than the Persian Gulf if you look at it in terms of its size from the Strait of Hormuz into the Red Sea all the way down to the Gulf of Aden. So it's a different situation. You can't just take one operation and say cookie cutter, we're going to do this here. It may sound good on paper. It does not translate well in execution. And when you look at the Strait of Hormuz itself, there, you know, within the Persian Gulf, there is not an egress-ingress route out of the Persian Gulf. The only way in and the only way out is through the Strait of Hormuz. And right now, by land on Qasem Island, on the Greater Tanub Island, the Lesser Tanub Island, Hormuz Island, on land at Bandar Abbas, there are capable anti-ship missile systems. We know that, but then there's also the light navy or the light fast swift boats, which are now being referred to as this mosquito fleet that are in these waters that are also capable. You know, when people, I would certainly offer to anybody just Google the Iranian maritime swift boats, and you will see that they aren't your boat you take out to go skiing. These have anti-ship missile capabilities on them to fire and interdict and strike. And if you look at how many they have, this is an entirely different situation. The United States will not be able to execute to success a similar type of operation simply because of the size of Iran, the coastline of Iran, the contention of the strait itself, and the geography of the Persian Gulf versus that of the Red Sea. Vastly different.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. And it didn't even work in the Red Sea, so it's not going to work in the Strait of Hormuz. But in terms of now, one of the things they mentioned today was a few things. They said that Trump said the negotiations are on a lifeline. He said that it's like 1% chance that they could be revived. He also had a National Security Council meeting today, I believe. He had a meeting with his top military personnel, I believe Netanyahu had the meeting with the National Security Council. So they both met with the top military personnel. And then apparently, and I haven't verified this, that they both spoke to each other. What's your thoughts on this kind of escalation that's going on?
Well, it certainly has all of the hallmark characteristics of hostilities increasing or hostilities resuming. I would, or for whatever pause that there was, which seemed not much, but this is going to resume and escalate. As Donald Trump had his meeting this morning in the Oval Office when he was entertaining the media, he said, "Now I got to go. I got a bunch of generals waiting on me to discuss this country of Iran. At the same time, Netanyahu is meeting with his Security Council, and I've also heard, and I actually think it was said by Trump himself about a phone call with Netanyahu, that he had a phone call not only yesterday but also today. So I have not seen a verification readout or anything come out of the White House that says yes, it's verified, but I do believe that in a statement, Trump did say that he had met, or he had spoke to Netanyahu, and this is where we're getting the, where I think that Israel has planned to conduct strikes, to resume strikes, regardless of what the United States is going to do or not. I think that Israel will not allow negotiations to reach some type of negotiated settlement with Iran to resume, and they're going to do everything they can to at least spoil that opportunity, knowing that if they conduct strikes, if they begin resumption of attacks, and we know that their bases are not only in Israel, we know that they do have an airfield that they've established in Iraq. We know that they can they've been using other nations such as the UAE, and that would certainly continue. So could Israel be the spoiler in this? Yes. Do I think that Donald Trump truly intended for peace negotiations to go on without the absolute promise of all of his conditions? No, I don't think so. I think Donald Trump is approaching this from a maximalist, absolutist standpoint that is not reasonable and not realistic. But I also think that if Israel does decide to go it alone, at least initially, knowing that the United States would come to its aid, that this is also a clear attempt by Netanyahu and Israel to frustrate relations and the visit that Donald Trump has planned to China here on Thursday. It benefits Israel in their position to continue the war with Iran and to spoil relations with China, knowing that China could be the envelope that I wouldn't say pushes Donald Trump off the ledge, but actually brings him back to the ledge of reasonability and sanity. And that if this expands or escalates further, that it could draw China and Russia directly. And I think that Israel knows that Xi Jinping is going to have that talk with Donald Trump in Beijing. So I think that there's high chance that we could see Israel escalating and conducting strikes here in the next 24 to 48 hours.
Oh, you think it'll be that soon? Because I mean, I guess we just don't know what's going to happen. But I thought, like, basically, because he's got the meeting with Xi and he's traveling on Wednesday, he's going to be in China on Thursday and he's going to return on Friday, that maybe he might do it on the weekend. Or do you think it's going to be a lot sooner than that?
Well, I think if it was entirely up to Donald Trump, he would ask to wait till the weekend so that he can have his meeting with Xi, try to save face with China, and that Israel is contained and controlled. So that's certainly possible. Also, Donald Trump needs time to then fly back over the international date line to return so he can place his short sale bets on the stock market before they close on Friday. So there's a lot of things that, yes, I think Donald Trump would want escalation or resumption of hostilities to wait until Friday night, Saturday morning. I think that that's probably what he has discussed with Netanyahu to, hey, you're going to do this, hold off at least until Friday or Saturday. I think that could certainly be a reality as well. I just what we've seen from typical fashion and typical nature of Israel in their preemptive defensiveness, preemptive strikes, that they will likely jump the gun and could potentially go earlier. We've seen it every time. I still think that going all the way back to the 28th of February, that there were plans. That the military buildup was still very much a provocation or a posturing, and that Israel launched attacks, launched strikes, kind of jumping the gun, and that the U.S. then had to follow suit with it because when you're when your crazy friend jumps into the burning house, you got to go in and try to get him out. And that's exactly what the 28th of February was. I think it caught even the U.S. off guard, which I would say why our targeting following those strikes was very sloppy and hasty. So could I see Israel responding or reacting early? I do. Is it possible that Donald Trump in his conversation with Netanyahu holds that off until Friday or Saturday? It's possible.
So I'm just reading now. We've got some breaking news, and this is a news. Once again, so this is from Galibaf, and Galibaf says this. He says, "Quote: There is no alternative but to accept the rights of the Iranian people as laid out in our 14-point proposal. Any other approach will be completely inconclusive. Nothing but one failure after another. The longer they drag their feet, the more American taxpayers will pay for it." So it seems like Iran's adamant that they want their 14-point plan. What's your thoughts on that, and how this likely demonstrates that kinetic war is coming?
So yeah, exactly. I think that Donald Trump's approach to this in his peace proposal that he had been conveying through J.D. Vance, Stephen Witkoff, and Jared Kushner in Pakistan was maximalist and absolutist. And would I say that Iran's justified and sovereign right to provide what they feel is best for Iran, as the Iranian foreign minister has said before, they don't negotiate for the benefit of the United States. They negotiate for the benefit of the Iranian people. So when you look at this, I think that in the calculus of the Iranian leadership, both the Ayatollah, commanders of the IRGC, and ministers, is that they're weighing the risk versus reward. They're weighing the likelihoods of what could happen, and they have been shown time and time again that whenever you go into negotiations with the United States, you get attacked. It's simply a method of waiting to resume attacks. And I think that Iran is now tired of that, it no longer trusts U.S. negotiations and is coming with the table with their own maximalist position. Because quite frankly, I don't think that Iran would even trust any accords that the United States would say in terms of, hey, you turn over the nuclear material, you claim to stop the nuclear program you never had, but you capitulate and say you'll stop it, and we'll lift sanctions and return the frozen assets. The United States won't do it, and I think Iran knows that anything that comes out of a negotiation with the United States is not going to end the war against them, and so that for Iran, this is an existential stand. And I do think that escalation, continuation, is on the horizon, and it has already been determined. It has already been decided. Now that the only thing that the world awaits is when was it decided to happen? Is it tonight? Is it tomorrow? Is it the weekend? But it certainly is coming, and neither side is standing down.
Okay, so one of the questions I asked a few people is, and I think you're the best person to answer this, is we saw during the first 39 days, America used a number of its, actually, let me build up to that. First question before that. So we saw the first 39 days, the US used a large number of its offensive weapons, a large number of its defensive weapons. Mike Kelly, who's a senator, said, according to an intelligence briefing, that basically the US had used a large amount of its offensive weapons, had used a large amount of its defensive weapons and its defense interceptor missiles, and they were running short. Now, I don't know if he meant running short in the sense of for this war, or holistically running short as well. And what I mean by that is, are they going to use everything they've got on this war? I guess what I'm trying to ask, because he's saying they're running short and they won't be ready for any kind of potential war with China.
It's a matter of both. Shortage in theater for this specific conflict, for what had been allocated to U.S. Central Command as a geographic combatant command, to U.S. Navy Central, to U.S. Army Central, to U.S. Marine Forces Central. There are allocations and authorizations of the amount of missiles, rockets, munitions, etc. That has obviously been far surpassed in terms of what has been allocated initially in the defense budget, but also in the defense war stocks. The United States maintains war stocks throughout every theater for contingency operations, but also for sustained operations. In U.S. Central Command area of responsibility, sustained and contingency war stocks have been entirely diminished. We know that because we've had to move theater defense systems out of South Korea, out of Ukraine. We've had to move various missiles that were going to be going to other allies, to Israel and to the region. So that is a fact, and nothing that Senator Mark Kelly shared was neither secret. He didn't give away the numbers or where they are located or what type. What he simply said is a publicly known and commonly known and now known to all statement that the United States is critically low in its stocks, not just in theater, period. Department of Defense wide. What does that mean? That consider someone at, Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth are at the craps table, and every time they roll, they're getting snake eyes, and they just can't get a break. But they've put so much into it. All their chips are on the table, and they keep rolling, and they keep rolling, and they keep rolling. And they tell their friend next to them, Lindsey Graham, hey, spot me $2 billion. I feel good on this next roll. And Lindsey Graham says, yeah, let's finish this. Puts down $2 billion. They roll again. It comes up. They didn't run the table, but it comes up. Oh, okay, we're surviving. Let's play a little bit more. And then they start playing on Lindsey Graham's money, meaning the American people's money, and realizing that you're taking from everything else. Where did that $2 billion come from? Where did those missiles that were allocated come from? Right now, the United States Department of Defense is taking out of its strategically dispositioned wartime stocks of missiles, bombs, defense capability. And not only are we moving those out of wartime stocks, we're also moving assets out of those theaters. We could not defend Taiwan right now if we had to. Couldn't. And quite frankly, Taiwan couldn't defend itself either. So at this point right now, am I necessarily concerned about China trying to overtake Taiwan militarily? No, because China knows they don't have to, because no one's coming to save them, because we've put all of our eggs in the Iran basket. Iran knows that too, and so does China, and so does Russia. Russia knows that we have stopped the endless funding and supplies of munitions to Ukraine. That has dwindled to almost nothing, and that systems that we had in Ukraine, we took out of EUCOM, European Command, and transferred those over to Central Command. So nothing that Mark Kelly shared is a secret or classified. This is common, public, open knowledge that the world can see.
No doubt. Now, in terms of this war, we know they lasted 39 days. There is a bigger military buildup at the moment. There's more aircraft carriers, there's more fighter jets, there's more destroyers, there's more KC tankers. And then they've also got the hypersonic missiles. I know that there's only 8, but they've got them. So if you look at the actual buildup, it seems like it's a lot more than it was on February the 27th. And so my question to you is, based on the buildup they have, if they would do exactly what they did previously, how long could they last with that current supply?
It's hard to say the exact number of days in terms of what they may have and how it may be used. To say number of days of supply is quite difficult, even for what the United States would be able to do as a former military practitioner who is involved in the planning of days of supply. In this type of conflict where we're using munitions in a way that's not really designed for how those munitions should be used, it's very hard to determine days of supply. And in terms of the side from Iran and days of supply, I think that in this period of time, as Iran has been expending Shahed one-way drones and hypersonic missiles, we do know that a lot of what they expended initially was older stock, not their newest, most exquisite, just like the United States had done. And we know that at the same time that they're using the Shahed one-way drone, that they're also producing more. So in this period of time where there's been less back and forth in attacks, has Iran continued to build its Shahed drones, continue to produce missiles, continue to move missiles around to use them. I think that they can sustain even in their kinetic ballistic capability for quite some time, certainly months, if not years. But then again, depending on what the United States response is. If the United States decides, hey, we're going to go all in, boots on the ground, we're going to take the 50,000 troops it's going to take to do it, and we're going to commit the Navy and the Air Force and Special Operations and the Marines, and we're going to put everything into that. Would Israel or would Iran then have their hands full? Certainly. But we know that would then also draw in sustainment and support from China or Russia. So that ability to defend, that ability to resist, that ability to continue fighting could last years. And I know that by experience because we spent over 2 decades in Afghanistan where we thought the Taliban had nothing. The Taliban was obliterated in 2002. Yet we didn't leave until 2021. Same thing with Iraq. George Bush, in his own way, didn't use the term obliterated, but said that the Iraqi army is destroyed, mission accomplished. We met all of our objectives. We won. And we're still there. So could Iran as a nation, but then also as an asymmetric threat in Iran and in the region, sustain for years? Absolutely. We have seen the proof of that in our own lifetime. You don't even have to open up a history book and go back to your granddad's war. We lived it. We saw it. We know that it's the case.
Yeah. Now, you're obviously a big believer that this is going to escalate a lot, and you're going to get to a point where possibly there could be a ground invasion, possibly there could be the use of a nuclear bomb. In terms of the way Trump has been conducting himself, he's not been very open about negotiations. There's been hardly any movement, and Iran has been a little bit flexible, but they've not fully been willing to move as well. With Trump's lack of movement, what do you think that is? Do you think that's because he just used this time to recalibrate and recoup and put his assets in the right place? Or do you think that he genuinely needed a deal? Like, why has the ceasefire been so long according to Trump's perspective?
Well, I think that the time needed to adjust composition, disposition, and strength in the region was direly needed. I think the Central Command commander probably taking the heed of his naval commanders, Fifth Fleet and other naval components, his carrier group commanders, probably were throwing up the red flag, like, hey, we cannot continue. Do we know that U.S. maritime naval assets have taken damage in strikes and or laundry room fires or whatever the case may be? The United States Navy fleet has sustained damage. The Fifth Fleet headquarters in Bahrain has sustained immeasurable, incompensable damage. So you now have to conduct operations from somewhere else. We know that Qatar is so much now in the target that U.S. Central Command forward is now considering moving from Qatar to Israel. That takes you're kind of out of the fight during that transition. So as the Navy, as the U.S. Central Command commander, with the input from his forces commanders, came back to the president and to the Joint Chiefs, before the ceasefire, we know that going into the ceasefire, Admiral Brad Cooper and General Dan Kane and other military advisors sat down with the president and the SecDef in the Situation Room and provided them a brief. In that brief, I'm quite certain that it included, we are out of Schlitz, which is what I think made Trump angry, which may have led to the fine let's nuke him comments or the position that we've heard about between him and Dan Kane. So I think that when the Navy and the Joint Chiefs came to the president and said, we are out of Schlitz, we cannot continue fighting or we're going to lose a major asset. We're going to lose, to the eyes of the world, a sunken cruiser or destroyer or, God forbid, an aircraft carrier. We're already losing aircraft over Iran and over the Gulf at a rate that we cannot sustain. We are bleeding and we have to take a knee to refit. We have to get the USS George Bush in the Gulf to replace the Ford because the Ford is falling apart. It's literally just falling apart at sea. So And now we know that now that the fort is back, that it's going to take like what 1.5 to 2 years to get it back to mission capable. So there was obviously things wrong. So I think that the ceasefire has extended as long as it has, not in the attempts or hopes at a true and genuine negotiation, but to reposition forces, rearm, move wartime stocks. Moving theater assets like Patriot missile systems, THAAD theater high anti-defense air defense systems from one theater to another. That's not an Amazon 2-day shipping mission. That takes weeks. So when you look at everything that had to be done to now reset for what we know is going to resume, yeah, I think the ceasefire was always intended as a ploy to go back and forth with this moment in mind that Donald Trump would have. It was probably already rehearsed. It was probably in a script. Hey, once the CENTCOM commander tells you that forces are ready, launch the I don't like the plan tweet and start making a big deal about how Iran's plan is horrible. Iran's plan hasn't changed since day one. Iran's proposal has not changed since the very first day in the beginning of negotiations. So to be surprised by it now is disingenuous. So in my hypothesis is that the ceasefire was implemented as a way for U.S. naval forces, maritime forces, land forces in the region to reset, give Israel time to bandage itself up and reset what it can with the Iron Dome and David Sling, and then right on schedule, on script, resume hostilities.
Now, we've just got some breaking news, and the news is that the UAE was secretly carrying out strikes on Iran. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, aside from verified evidence of such, to me, it was something that was always likely and or apparent, simply because of the range of missiles or strikes or jets or tankers, and the fact that the United States does have bases in the UAE. It would, so to say that, hey, the United States and Israel want to conduct these strikes. We want to conduct strikes against Iran. Where should we do it? Oh, we're not going to use that base in the UAE because the UAE is neutral. No, the UAE hasn't been neutral from day one. The UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, none of them have been neutral. Kuwait, none of them have been neutral from the very first day. Iraq is the other dragged in party to this. Iraq didn't want to join the war against Iran, but because the United States launched attacks against Iran from Iraq, to include Israel establishing this secret airfield in central Iraq, has now made Iraq a belligerent in this war against their own will. It's like taking over the country and then say we're going to force you into this war. It's like how France was used to potentially attack Britain in World War II. So when you look at the factors at play in this, no, it is no surprise to me that the United Arab Emirates not only supported attacks and strikes by Israel and the United States, but also conducted that of their own in support of U.S. and Israeli operations, because they certainly have the capability. And if they had not expended anything, why did part of the $8 billion Emergency Powers Act supplemental package for aid include also providing aid to the UAE? Why would you need to provide that if they hadn't used any of their stuff? They did. They've been involved in this from day one. The UAE is not a neutral party in this. They are a belligerent in the conflict.
Completely agree with you. Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar, thank you so much for joining us. Always appreciate you coming on. I know people can find you on your website, which is Anthony for Congress, right?
That's right. www.aguilar for Congress for US for uscongress.com.
Brilliant. And everyone should follow you on that. Also, your X profile, which is Anthony AGU, and then it's got some numbers on it.
Yeah, 88102.
Brilliant. And obviously Instagram and all the rest of the socials. Really appreciate you coming on. We'll definitely get you back on again. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. That was Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar, Green Beret. Make sure you're following him. Make sure you subscribe to him. Great guy, great knowledge, great information. Watch out for him. He is awesome. Like, comment, and subscribe. What's your thoughts on what he said? He thinks the war's coming in the next day or two. He said war is coming in the next day or two. What's your thoughts on that? Do you agree with them or not? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, comment, and subscribe, and have your notifications on. Go to the notifications, press all, and put them all on. Great guy, great person. Like, comment, and subscribe. Subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. Now, tomorrow, we've got so many interviews lined up. We're going to be starting earlier, just so you know. Tomorrow, we'll be starting at 11 a.m. Eastern. We've got David Icke, the world famous David Icke coming on. We've got Dr. Atusa. We've got Professor Izadi. We have Professor Marandi today. We've got Professor Izadi. We've got Harrison Smith from InfoWars. And then in the evening, we've got Ryan Dawson. We've got Larry Johnson, CIA. And we've got the most viral person right now, which is Professor Robert Pape, to talk about his escalation trap. So tomorrow is going to be huge. If you're on the YouTube, though, we are going to be moving across to the X space. So watch out for that. And we're going to be moving across to the X space. So everyone come across there. I'm going to start it now. And so everyone come across. Okay, cool. So come across that, and I'll see you guys on the space.